Hi, gang. As you know, this paper is research-driven and requires MLA documentation. Now, there are several different types of documentation styles that are used in academic writing, and which style is used depends to a large degree on the academic discipline a paper is written to address. Fortunately, the basics of using documentation are virtually the same, and the same skills are needed to use all of the formats well. If you learn how to use MLA documentation well, the skills you learn will be easy to adapt to using APA, Chicago Manual of Style, or, well, any form of academic documentation. I cannot emphasize the importance of learning documentation strongly enough. And now is the time to learn it, because courses in any discipline that have first semester composition as a prerequisite will expect you to know how to document sources. Many of you will be taking such courses next semester, and you will need to know how to use documentation because composition courses are the only courses that teach you how to use it. You have to learn to use documentation if you want to earn a degree. For one thing, some profs are extremely picky about it. A history prof I worked with in Illinois failed a paper if even one in-text citation was left out. A prof who taught at CSN in another department and may still teach here takes off a point for every character in a bibliography entry that is formatted incorrectly. That means students who write good papers could end up with a negative grade if they format even one article title incorrectly in the bibliography. Now that might seem extreme, but each prof sets his or her course requirements and grading standards, and it's the student's job to learn what they need to learn in order to meet those standards. But even if you never run into a prof who is that nitpicky, and I hope you don't, you could face really serious problems if you don't document well. Failing to document any idea taken from a source other than your own brain is a form of plagiarism. Whether it's intentional or not, plagiarism often earns an F for a paper, and it does in this course. Depending on the prof, one instance of plagiarism in a paper actually could cause you to earn an F for the entire course, or even be reported for college disciplinary action. Plagiarism is taken very seriously in the academy, and the academy is what we call post-secondary education. If you want to pass any course that requires research-based papers, including this one, you absolutely must learn to document and learn it now. One of the main purposes of documentation is to give the people who originate ideas credit for their work. Many writers, including professors who publish articles or books, make their living off the thoughts in their heads. Their ideas are the fruit of their labor, just as the Mona Lisa is the fruit of Leonardo da Vinci's labor. You wouldn't hang a copy of the Mona Lisa in your house and tell people you painted it, would you? Of course not. It's the same thing. You can't pass someone else's ideas off as your own idea. It's a form of intellectual theft. We have to provide documentation for any information or any idea that is not common knowledge. Common knowledge is exactly what it says it is. It is information that virtually anyone over the age of about 10 should know. It would include statements such as, "The first day of spring is in March." William Shakespeare wrote Hamlet. There are 50 states in the United States. A 90-degree angle is a right angle. Anything that is not that common needs a citation. And it doesn't matter whether the information is something we already knew or not. I learned that in high school is not documentation, and it is not an excuse to not provide documentation. Let's say, for example, that you know from personal experience that many heart patients are prescribed digitalis because it helps strengthen the heart muscle. That isn't common knowledge that you would expect anyone to know, so you would have to go and find a source that states that and then document that source. It's usually easier to work with the information from sources we've already located and studied in preparing to write a paper. Finding a source that states something we already know can be difficult and very time-consuming. But that doesn't excuse us from providing documentation for the idea because it isn't our own personal idea. Because documentation gives credit for ideas, not just wording, we must supply documentation for information whether we put it in our own words or not. We use summary and paraphrase to put information in our own words, and we have to document the source that we took that information from. Remember, we have to give credit for ideas, not just wording. To avoid plagiarism, we must use two elements of documentation. One element provides specific details about the source we took the information from, including the author, the title of an article or chapter, the title of the book, academic journal, magazine, website, or larger work, the publisher, the year of publication, the web address, and in some cases, page numbers. In addition to giving writers credit for their ideas, you see, documentation serves the purpose of providing information for readers who find a particular idea interesting and want to learn more about it. All of the details we provide in the longer of the two elements of documentation should make it very easy for readers to find the source so they can learn more about a specific idea in our paper. But we need to include the second element of documentation to avoid plagiarism too. The second element is an in-text citation that identifies which specific ideas came from which specific sources. One of the two required elements is a bibliography entry. The bibliography entry is the element that provides detailed information about a source that will help readers locate that source if they want to learn more about a specific idea included in our paper. Every documentation style, including MLA, APA, and Chicago Manual of Style, requires some form of bibliography entry for every source used in the paper, and the exact format for each entry varies. For one thing, the format will vary depending on the type of source it refers to because readers need different information to be able to locate different types of sources. Now this makes sense, right? We don't need web addresses if the source is a print book, and we're probably not going to have page numbers for ideas taken from websites. But the format for the same type of source will also be different depending on whether you're using MLA, APA, or some other style. Fortunately, we don't have to remember any of this stuff. All we have to do to figure out how to do our bibliography entry is first decide what type of source we're using, then look up how to format entries for that type of source in the style we're using, and then all we have to do is copy the format exactly. Really, it's not rocket science. In fact, it's pretty simple. In MLA, the bibliography appears on the last page of the paper, and it is on a separate page, so it starts on a new page. That page is titled Works Cited in MLA. MLA is used in most courses in arts and humanities disciplines. Now, in APA format, the bibliography also appears on the last page of the paper, and it is also on a separate page. In APA, the page is titled References. APA is used in most courses in the social sciences and many courses in the hard sciences. Now, there are other documentation styles as well, and some profs prefer a style other than MLA or APA. Some of those styles use footnotes instead of a separate special bibliography page. But in any documentation style, there will be some kind of bibliography entry that provides details to help readers locate sources if they want to read more about one of the ideas in our paper. But how do readers know which source to look for if they want to learn more about one specific idea in our paper? Well, that's where the second element of documentation comes into play. We use in-text citations to indicate which source each idea in our paper comes from. Now, no, that doesn't mean we need an in-text citation for every sentence. If all of the information in the paragraph comes from one source and there aren't any direct quotes in the paragraph, we need just one citation for that entire paragraph. If we use more than one source in a paragraph, we use in-text citations to identify which portions of the paragraph came from which source. And as we'll see, direct quotes have to have their own special citation, even if it's exactly the same as the citation for the entire paragraph. Now don't panic if that doesn't all make sense and if you're confused or don't understand it at this point. We'll talk more about that when we study how to do in-text citations in a later video. Now, while the exact format of the in-text citation will vary depending on whether we're using MLA, APA, or some other style, all of them will consist of some very brief indication that directly and clearly points the reader to the bibliography entry for the source that idea is taken from. It's kind of a shorthand way of saying, you want to read more about this? Well, look at this article published in this magazine on this date written by this person. While some forms of documentation number bibliography entries and use numbers as their in-text citations, both MLA and APA use the first item in the bibliography entry, which is almost always either the name of the author or authors or the title of the publication. MLA uses authors and page numbers as in-text citations, and APA uses authors and the year of publication as their in-text citation. Talking about MLA, if I take the ideas in a paragraph from pages 215 through 218 in a work written by John Smith, and there is only one entry on my works cited page by an author named Smith, I can end my paragraph with parentheses, Smith, 215-218, close parenthesis. That will tell my readers that they can find the source written by Smith and read pages 218 through 218 for more details about the ideas that they found interesting in that paragraph of my paper. Now, the two elements of documentation work together. The in-text citation briefly identifies which idea came from which source, and the bibliography entry provides all the details readers need to find the specific source that information came from if they want to learn more. Neither element is of any value at all if we don't include both elements. That's why we have to make sure we use in-text citations to briefly identify which source provides which information, and a bibliography entry that provides all the details readers need if they want to learn more about that idea. I hope this introduction to MLA documentation helps you understand what needs to be documented and explains why we need to use both elements of documentation to help our readers and to avoid plagiarism. We're going to discuss how to compose an MLA Works Cited page and how to use MLA in-text citations in much more depth than 2 other videos. So don't worry if you're still somewhat uncertain at this point. But I'm always here to help you. And if you have any questions about this video or need help with documentation as you write drafts of your papers, all you need to do is email me through Canvas. Learning documentation appropriately is one of the most important aspects of writing that we cover in this course, and I want to help you learn it well any way I possibly can. So do email me if you need help. Thanks so much for studying this video. I hope you have some time to relax and enjoy life today.